Hello everybody, BeMetalways here. Welcome to 2024, and the first entry is to still look back into 2023 with the Aggregated Mega List. As in most years, I have compiled several year-end lists to form an aggregated list. This year I got hold of 24 lists. You can check the description below to see which ones, and they are all metal or rock related. If you have others that you know of that are not listed here, please let me know in the comments. Now, I avoid individual lists, so I prefer already aggregated lists from publications. I took the top 10 of each of those lists and assigned 10 points to number 1, 1 point to number 10, and everything in between distributed accordingly. There were 2 lists that did not feature a ranking, so I divided the 55 points equally among their chosen albums. Tiebreakers were first the number of lists and then the highest position in any list. Only number 20 was a complete tie within those 3 criteria, so the list of top 20 actually featured 21 bands. So let's go through it from number 20 to 1. As I mentioned, number 20 is a tie between Cattle Decapitation, Terracite, and Riverside Identity. So both albums were in my list that you can also check the link on the description below. And as I discussed in my list, I do agree that those albums were top of the year. Both of them appeared in 2 lists of the 24 that I compiled, and both of them were number 1 in 1 list each. Night Demon Outsider, it's an album that I didn't cover. I actually listened to it during the year. I thought it was a good album, but it didn't really grab me as something that interested me a lot. But they did very well. They appeared in 3 lists and achieved 15 points, so they are number 19. Mammoth WVH, Mammoth 2, the album of the Son of Van Halen, was very high in 2 of the lists at least, especially the Total Guitar and Guitar World lists. So really a guitar-related album that was even number 1 in one of those 3 lists. Number 17, Obituary, Dying of Everything, was also part of my list. They showed up in 2 lists and also number 1 in 1 list. So they didn't appear a lot, but very strong when they did. Svalbard, The Weight of the Mask, 16 points and 3 appearances. This is an album that I listened only once or twice. I liked what I heard, but I didn't dig into it. So maybe should take more time with it. It sounds like kind of a metalcore, but with very high quality, if I'm not mistaken. Number 15, Code Orange, The Above, was actually one album that entered my list because of this aggregated list, that I took time to listen to it and I really liked it. I already commented about this album in my own list, and they also appeared in 3 lists. How do you say this one? I should have checked. Kosnateni, I guess, with Upal. It's a black metal project from one dude. 3 appearances, 1 being number 2, so a strong presence there. For me, didn't appeal too much, but I only listened to it once. Number 13, Green Lung, This Heathen Lands, with 19 points, 4 appearances, and 1 as number 1. So a strong album this year that I did like it. Didn't make my top 20, but I think was a good album. Sometimes it reminded, especially the vocals, reminded me too much of Mastodon and kind of bothered me a bit. That's maybe the one main reason why it didn't feature in my list. Number 12, Creeper, Sangivore. This one made my list very strongly. They had 21 points, 3 appearances, so not that many, but 1 as number 1 and 1 as number 2. So of all the points that they could achieve with 3 appearances, they converted 71% of those. So a strong presence, and the reason why I checked this in more details is because their performance in this aggregated list. Number 11, In Flames with 4 Gone, also 21 points, but 4 appearances and 1 as number 2. So a strong album that also have been featured in my personal list. Going to the top 10, Catatonia, Sky Void of Stars, 22 points, 4 appearances, 1 as number 1. This album was in my honorable mentions, so I did like it quite a lot. It didn't make my list, but I do agree that it's a good album. But I'm quite surprised at how well it did. Number 9, Baroness Stone, with also 22 points, but 5 presents. So 5 of the 24 list was a strong number of appearances from the Stone album. Number 8 is not metal at all. This is an album that did very well in rock-focused publications. This is the Rolling Stones coming back after whatever number of years that they are active with Hackney Diamonds, and with 4 appearances, 2 as number 1. So very strong rock album that dominated the more rock-related lists. Number 7, Insomnium Anno 1696. This is an album that was also on my list. Only 3 appearances, but very strong everywhere they appeared. 1 time as number 2. So they converted 83% of the 30 points that they could get by appearing in 3 lists. So I can only agree this was a top album in my list as well. Just above them with 26 points, Avenged Sevenfold with Life is But a Dream, also featured in my list, and one of the most frequently present albums of all of those, with 6 appearances, 1 being number 2. So they didn't, on average, they didn't appear so high when they show up, but they were very frequent. As I mentioned, 6 appearances, the second highest, as you will see later. Number 5, Jesus Peace with So Unknown. This is 27 points, 5 appearances, never as number 1 or 2. So again, an album that didn't feature very high when appeared, but appeared quite often with 5 presences. I didn't know this band or album. I checked because of this list, and I found that it was quite an interesting kind of metalcore, so I'll give it more time. Then we go to number 4, and here we do have a jump in the number of points, achieving 30, the first album to achieve 30 points, Wayfarer American Gothic, with 4 appearances, 1 being number 1. If I'm not mistaken, this is Angry Metal Guy, so a very cool website with album reviews that in their aggregated lists, this album was number 1. That bumped the album up to number 4. Other than that, they were not as number 1 or 2, but very, very well present, because with 4 lists they could have done 40 points and they were able to achieve 30. So a very good black metal album that I still need to check, so it didn't feature in my list. Number 3 was also an album that I checked in more details because of their performance here, and I do agree that it's a very good album, Tom Mold, The Enduring Spirit. I didn't have time to really get a score for them, so I did rank them, but I mentioned in my personal honorable mentions. They appeared in 4 lists, but what they did very well is to be number 1 and number 2 in 1 list each. So very strong performance. Then we have the album that was the darling of the media this year, Sleep Token, Take Me Back to Eden, with 6 appearances, so the same as Avenged Sevenfold. So the second highest, the number 1, as we will see, is the most frequent album, and you will know absolutely why. But Sleep Token not only appeared 6 times, but twice as number 1. So they were a very strong album. Now, this is totally not for me. I listened to this album 4 or 5 times because of their performance in those lists. And I must say, I don't think it's a bad album, but it's definitely not for me. It's too radio friendly, it's too soft, sometimes a bit of a snooze fest for me. It sounds almost like pop music, not even rock. So it's not for me. It doesn't mean it's a bad album. It's definitely a lot of people are loving it. So it made it a very big splash in the media with 6 appearances, getting 37 points, and they are number 2. Number 1 is no surprise. Whenever we have a big name dropping a new album, they always perform excellently well. Why? Because in some publications they are very high in the ranking, but because they cross boundaries, Metallica 72 Seasons is for this year. They cross boundaries. They could be in a more rock-related publication, but also in a very metal-related publication. They are, of course, the biggest name in heavy metal, so they can show up everywhere, and they show up in 11 of the 24 lists. So as I said, 6 was the highest, other than Metallica, so it's almost double than any other band. So strong performance, achieving 69 points. This is way way more than any other albums. Actually, if you add Sleep Token and Tom Mold, which was number 2 and 3 points, you would have a tie with Metallica. So no doubt that they perform excellently. They were number 1 in 2 lists and number 2 in 3 lists. So I already comment on this album quite a lot. I don't have to talk about it again, but it is Metallica, and the name carries then whatever they put out. So that's it, the list of the aggregated 24 lists of 2023. Hope this was useful and interesting. I hope you like it, and BeMetalways!